This video is brought to you by Brilliant. It's no secret that the Conservative Party is in a very tricky place right now. After all, we've made plenty of videos on it before. It would be easy, though, to point to the last few years of chaos and suggest that this is solely responsible for the Tories' woes. After all, when you go through 3 leaders and prime ministers in a single term, you can't really expect the public to view you as a united, credible party anymore. However, while the last few years of chaos certainly further damaged the Tories, it wasn't the start of their decline. Their decline really started back in 2016, when the UK voted to leave the EU. This decision may not have hurt the party too much at the time. After all, they went on to win 2 elections afterwards. But in the long run, it's responsible for many of the problems we see today. So in this video, we're going to have a look at how Brexit ultimately broke the Tory party, and have a look at what this means for them going forward. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, it's probably worth getting into what this elusive damage actually is. As we see it, there were 4 ways in which the Tory party was damaged by Brexit. It made them unpopular for certain sections of the population, it worsened the quality of Tory MPs and caused deep party fragmentation, it encouraged the Tories to indulge in culture wars, and it began to damage the Tories' economic credibility. Let's have a look at each of these in turn. While the UK voted to leave the EU in 2016, the proportion of Leave voters varied in size across different demographics. Younger people specifically were the most likely age group to want to remain part of the EU, with Ipsos Mori polling suggesting that a huge 75% of 18 to 24-year-olds and 60% of 25 to 34-year-olds opted to vote Remain. The decision to leave and the hard Brexit negotiated by subsequent Tory prime ministers has only served to further weaken support from these age groups for the Tories. Now, even pre-Brexit, about 20% of people aged between 18 and 34 said that they strongly disliked the Conservative Party. This increased significantly after the referendum, going all the way up to 40% by 2023. In essence, Brexit has contributed hugely to the damage of the Tory brand, and means that even those in younger age groups who align with the Tories economically or socially are less likely now to vote for them. Now, it isn't just the younger generation that feel that the Conservative Party have betrayed them over Brexit. Scotland and Northern Ireland both voted to remain, with 62% of Scottish voters voting Remain and 55.8% of Northern Irish voters voting Remain. Being dragged out of the EU against their will by the Tory UK government has not done good things for the Tories' reputation in either nation. However, the fact that Scottish voters were persuaded to vote to remain part of the UK as recently as 2014, at least in part because of the UK's position in the EU, has only served to make things even worse. As the graph shows, Scottish people's trust in the UK government has dropped by about 10 points since the referendum. So it's clear that the Tories have damaged their brand with specific sections of the population, especially younger voters and voters in Scotland, as a result of the decision to leave. The effect here has been that the Conservative Party is increasingly older and more English, limiting their pool of voters. So, moving on to the second way that Brexit broke the Tories, the worsening of the quality of MPs and increasing factionalism. Now, back in 2019, Boris Johnson faced a vote on a motion that aimed to take control of parliamentary business away from the government and instead hand it to Parliament. Johnson's government stated that any Tory MP that voted for the motion would have the whip withdrawn, meaning that they would no longer be Tory MPs. In total, 21 MPs voted for the amendment and subsequently had the whip withdrawn. A number of these Tory MPs were not admitted back to the party and either stood down at the next election or lost the election to a newly selected Tory candidate. Among the kill list was Theresa May's Chancellor Philip Hammond, John Major's Chancellor Ken Clarke, Lord Chancellor David Gauke, Chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee Dominic Grieve, and rising star in the Tory party Rory Stewart. In one fell swoop, all of this experience was culled from the party. Even before this, the situation in the Tory party was pretty bad though. The party had split into different factions over Brexit, with the most prominent faction, the European Research Group, or ERG, causing continuous headaches for the Prime Minister. Even after the UK left the EU, these factions remained, with many of the old ERG members joining a new Coronavirus Recovery Group, or CRG. They started putting pressure on the Prime Minister to lift lockdown and allow social contact throughout the coronavirus pandemic. Even now, Rishi Sunak has been having to fight off the so-called Five Families, who have threatened to undermine his Rwanda plans. So, rather than the party fragmentation ending after the UK left the EU, it's actually only gotten worse. So, moving on to the third way that Brexit broke the Tories, the culture wars. In essence, the main takeaway from the Brexit referendum for the Tories was that leaning into social and cultural issues in a campaign can be more powerful than simply focusing on the economy. Brexit wasn't simply a vote to leave an economic bloc, it was a rejection of the status quo and a vote against the Liberal establishment. Ever since the vote, Tories have convinced themselves that focusing on what they see as culture war and culture war adjacent wedge issues will work out for them in the long run. Sunak's government frequently focuses on things like the trans debate, on immigration, and on what they call common sense environmental policies, such as scaling back the UK's net zero by 2050 commitments. All of these are designed to appeal to this same anti-liberal elite sentiment that they believe won them the referendum in 2016. But these are far less effective when voters are primarily concerned with the economy and cost of living. Which brings us to the final way in which Brexit broke the Tories, a loss of economic credibility. Now, this is something that has historically been one of the Tories' strongest points. However, polling from 2023 shows that 2/3 of voters believe that Brexit has damaged the economy, and even among Leave voters, only 1 in 5 actually think that the economic impact has been positive. Now, the Tories are already struggling with trust on the economy as the party presiding over a cost of living crisis. The damage already done to them as a result of Brexit, though, certainly doesn't help them convince the public that they should remain in charge of the economy. So, in conclusion, David Cameron's plan originally was to use the referendum as a way of putting the issue of Europe to bed once and for all. Not only did he not achieve this, it seems that he may have just broken his party completely instead. A lot of stuff we talk about in our videos can often seem pretty complicated, especially when we dive deep into detailed data and economics. But there's a fun and easy way for you to learn more about these topics, which doesn't cost thousands of dollars or take years and years of studying. That's because Brilliant is the best way to learn maths, data science, and computer science interactively. And the fun thing is, it doesn't take long to learn either. These complex topics are broken down into small and accessible chunks, designed around your busy schedule, whatever your skill level. That means that if you spend just a few minutes a day, you can gain new knowledge over time, in an actually fun way. As time goes on, you'll get used to that feeling of learning too, because this isn't just about sitting down and reading. Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning to teach you the principles of otherwise quite complex topics, and ensuring you understand what's actually going on. So whether you want to brush up on your basic math skills, improve your employment prospects by learning about future technology, or just have fun with coding, then you can check out everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days by clicking the link below. Plus, the first 200 of you that sign up will get 20% off Brilliant's premium annual subscription. Thanks for your support.